Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Dr. Loren Scott. He's Professor Emeritus in Economics from LSU. He's traveled all over the world speaking and has advised countries and governments and the biggest businesses in the world. He's going to talk to us about the last 8 years in low growth, about President Trump's deregulation and the effect on the economy, positive, and also the expected very positive result of the tax cuts. He's also going to talk to us about the economy in Louisiana is growing and going to continue to grow. Join us on the next Legal Lines with Dr. Loren Scott. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. First of all, I want to thank you for considering our firm for help in handling your legal matter. We know what we're doing. We've been around for a long time. We have over 60 years combined legal experience as lawyers. I've been practicing over 30 years, Sean over 25, and I have paralegals and legal secretaries who've worked for me for over 27 years. We've handled about every kind of case you can handle, and we've been very good at it. The bottom line is, it is our goal to be your protector when necessary, advisor, negotiator, and to successfully conclude the litigation for you in a way that is very favorable. Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. He's a Professor Emeritus, School of Economics at LSU.
Hey,
Professor,
good to be back. Good to be back.
Great to see you again.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I always know when I need to get in touch with you because you've just recently kind of done your analysis of for the last year and what you project is going to happen in 2018. And so I kind of wanted to pick your brain both from a national standpoint and also on a local standpoint. First, I want to explain to folks real quickly, though, that you are an emeritus kind of fellow. You are considered and highly respected as an expert in economics by all the big medias, by government on all levels, and so it's really an honor to be able to interview you again.
Well, it's great to be here.
Thank you. Let's dive in. So we, in our view, at least mine for sure, have endured 8 years of what you predicted would be low growth, just like Europe under President Obama. Explain why.
Well, the primary reason was because President Obama was not focused on economic growth, he was focused on fairness, okay? And when you focus on fairness, you become like Europe. And if you look at Europe, Europe is characterized by very, very slow growth. So we ended up with, if you go all the way back to World War II, look at all the growth periods we've been through, those 8 years were the slowest growth years we've had since World War II. Very, very slow growth rate. And part of the reason behind that is if you focus on fairness, number one, you want to raise taxes. That's just the nature of the animal.
To take money away from the rich and give to the poor.
That's right.
Okay.
And not only were taxes raised, but there's a lot of talk of even more taxes. And so if you're in a business, what taxes do is they shift the cost curves upward. And anything that shifts the cost curves upward in a firm causes them to produce less output and hire fewer people. So the first thing was the taxes side. The second thing was the regulations. If you look at the number of pages in the Federal Registry since 1960, coming forward, 7 of the 10 highest number of pages on an annual basis in the Federal Register were during the Obama administration.
Wait, say that again?
If you look at all the years since 1960, look at the number of pages added to the Federal Register.
It's almost 60 years. 7
of the 10 highest years were in those 8 years.
So out of 60 years or so.
Yeah. And included, by the way, 2016 was the highest ever. So he was just right. Now, again, you may think that those are fair regulations. But again, from a business standpoint, regulations shifts cost curve upward and causes firms to hire fewer people and to produce less output. And hence we got...
So their costs go up, so they hire fewer people, and they quit producing stuff.
And not only was it the fact that regulations went up, it was that you didn't know which was coming next. Again, you have all these new regulations that came during that time period. You just didn't know what was coming next. And when you don't know what's coming next, the business person sets on his wallet.
Because it's a risk.
Wallet says, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do anything because I don't know what's coming next.
And that explains why we've heard about the $1 trillion, just seemed like Apple maybe, all these trillions of dollars being held overseas because they don't want to bring it here because they figure it's going to be taken from them somehow.
Well, and not only that, but the corporate tax rates were among the highest in the industrialized world. So what do? You leave it over there and hope for some sort of, even if not a temporary regulation, a permanent regulation that we have now that lowers their cost so they bring it back. And that's exactly what they did, because what has happened now is Trump has done the exact opposite of this. He's more focused on growth, so he is lowering regulations. I mean, wherever Obama was writing them in, he's taking an eraser and erasing them out. And I think...
Let's talk about that number you gave me, that ratio.
Yeah, I mean, it's about a 22-to-1 ratio. I mean, in other words, the number of regulations that have been erased have been 22 to every one. As a matter of fact, the minute he came into office, 10 days after he came into office, he instructed all of his departments, you cannot issue a new regulation unless you get rid of 2. And so now cost curves are coming down, okay? And not only are they coming down, but people think they're going to come down even more. Right. This is a deregulation environment, just like what we saw, for example, during the Reagan years. And then, of course, the second thing that he's done that I think we're yet to see the benefits of is the cut in tax rates. He came in talking, we need to cut tax rates. And that happened in the latest tax bill. There's a lot not to like in that tax bill, but it did lower tax rates, and people are going to find a whole lot more money in their checkbooks, in their banking accounts now. And 2/3 of real gross domestic product is consumer spending. Well, consumers are going to have a whole lot more to spend. And then corporations are going to have a whole lot more money available to invest in new equipment, make investments in new equipment and productivity increases and those sorts of things.
In my head, Dr. Scott, taxes is the way the government takes control of the funds. And in my experience now, 57 years, I don't see the government do very many things very effectively, much less efficiently.
Well, I'm a very conservative economist, as well known. I'm a very conservative economist, and I think government is more often the problem, not the solution.
And so you leave the money with the people.
If you think of it as a solution, you're going to have 7 out of the 10 highest years of regulation, and you're going to get slow growth, and that's exactly what we got. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see going forward. I think number one, we've already seen 2 quarters in excess of 3% growth rate compared to 2.1, the earlier one.
Which was the average, right?
Yeah, that was 2.1% over 8 years. It was just moribund growth rate. It was growth, at least, that's the good news, but it was very slow. And now I think what's going to happen, once this tax bill starts hitting people's checkbooks, I think you're going to see 3% plus growth rate going into 2018, 2019.
So how much of the growth up until the tax benefits are actually realized, how much of the growth in the stock market and the GDP and all of that is related strictly to the deregulation steps taken?
Well, I think most of the deregulation, most of what happened in 2017 was due to the deregulation. In fact, we didn't get the tax cuts until this year. So, and you're already seeing an upward bump in the growth rate in the United States, and now I think you're going to see another upward bump because you not only have the continuation of the deregulation, now you got the reduced tax rates. And so I think the combination of those things is going to cause the U.S. economy to grow way smarter than it has for the last few years. And you're already seeing some evidences of that. We're going to start seeing employment numbers go up. I think unemployment numbers are already pretty low, but they're pretty low, not because job growth. They're pretty low because people quit the workforce. They just dropped out of the workforce. And I think you'll see some of those people coming back in now as things get better.
So. You indicated earlier that there were some things about the Trump tax package that came down, law that was passed, you would have done differently. What are those things?
Well, number one, I would like to be simpler. I mean, I personally would like for us to be able to pretty much fill it out on the back of a postcard and send it in. And this did not make things simpler. This made things more complex. For the first time ever, there were tax breaks based on what your occupation was, which is, I don't think my accountant wife said she'd never ever heard that.
And I'm one of the hated groups.
Yeah, and, well, actually, what you want to do is be an architect and engineer, because they got really special. Just because you're an architect or engineer, you get some really special tax breaks, and I don't like that at all. But so there's some things about it were not good, but the main thing is rates went down, and we're going to get some bump from that. For sure.
So as I understand it, the corporate rates went from, 35% to about 21%?
That's correct.
And so that's going to, based on your analysis, cause businesses to do what?
What is shifting cost curves down in those firms, which means, and typically your principles of economics class tells you shift cost curves down, you produce more and you hire more people.
Okay.
So that's going to cause the economy to grow. And we've already seen, just a whole plethora of firms that have announced what they're going to do is they're going to use part of this to give bonuses and raises to the people. All
right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith for Legal Lines, and my special guest, Dr. Loren Scott, Professor Emeritus, LSU Economics. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. First of all, I want to thank you for considering our firm for help in handling your legal matter. We know what we're doing. We've been around for a long time. We have over 60 years combined legal experience as lawyers. I've been practicing over 30 years, Sean over 25, and I have paralegals and legal secretaries who've worked for me for over 27 years. We've handled about every kind of case you can handle, and we've been very good at it. The bottom line is, it is our goal to be your protector when necessary, advisor, negotiator, and to successfully conclude the litigation for you in a way that is very favorable. Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. He's Professor Emeritus Economics at LSU. Let's dive back in, please, sir.
Okay.
So we talk about the tax cuts. Let's talk about the bad stuff.
Okay.
His policies that he's talking about that don't make sense.
Yeah, and on that, I think the most worrisome thing to me is the international trade position. This kind of anti-free trade policy that he's following is very, 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 very worrisome. For example, the latest tariffs on washing machines coming in, and some other things like that. I mean, putting tariffs and import quotas on things sounds really cool on the surface until you start looking behind what's going to happen. Because number one, anybody that wants to go out and buy a washing machine has got to pay a higher price.
Right.
So that's not good. But more importantly, when you put an import tariff or quota on one of our trading partners' products, they always retaliate. They always turn around and we'll say, okay, if you're going to do that to us, we're going to put an import tariff quota on your sugar cane or your chemicals that you're producing or your gasoline that you're shipping to us. They always retaliate. And the problem with getting involved in import quotas and tariffs is you can very easily get involved in a trade war. And a trade war was basically one of the most important things that caused the Great Depression back in 1929, 1934. We got involved in a trade war with our countries where we raised our tariffs, so they raised theirs, so we raised ours. And our exports dropped by 2/3 in just 5 years. Well, you drop our exports by 2/3, we're going to go into something that will make the Great Recession pale into insignificance. So it's just very worrisome to me what his position is on this.
So their argument would be, well, you might have to pay more for your washing machine, but you're providing a job for a fellow American, and we're too big a buyer for these people to retaliate.
No. They will
what is their rationale?
You're never too big a buyer for them to retaliate. They're just basically trying to pick out certain industries that they want to protect. And when you start walking down that road, that's a very bad road, because you're going to end up helping one group and you end up hurting another group. And you learn in economics a very important law called the law of comparative advantage. And the law of comparative advantage says when you go down that road, you end up with everybody worse off, not everybody better off. When you go out there and you try to get rid of barriers to trade like import tariffs and quotas, there are going to be some losers, but on the net, everybody ends up better off. And so that's why this is such a worrisome deal. It's going to be interesting to see how far it goes. He wants to renegotiate with Mexico and Canada. And I will tell you, the problem that we have in international trade is not free trade agreements. Our problem is international trade is the absence of free trade agreements. We don't have enough of them. Because if you take the amount that we import from Canada and divide it by how much we export to Canada, the difference is only about 4%. For Mexico, the difference is about 28%. It's a little bit higher, but if you took out car parts, it almost goes to a surplus. Our problem is with China. We import 4 times more from China.
Interesting.
Because we don't have a free trade agreement. It's the free trade agreement that's going to make things better.
And whose fault is that? Is that the USA's fault or China's fault or both?
Well, in this case, I think I have to say it's the administration's fault, because there was already a free trade agreement in the works with our Asian partners. Now, how good that was, I don't know, because I had a chance to very detailed report. But one of the things the president did was to throw it out the window and say, we're not going to do that. What I think what he needs to be doing is precisely that. He needs to be going after free trade agreements, especially with the Orient, especially with China, to try to remove barriers to trade.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Let's talk about the deficit and the debt. I mean, what debt of 22 million at the end of this? I mean, 22 trillion.
It would have been, it'd be nice if it was 22 million.
So what do we do about this stuff? And then what? We're back at $1 trillion.
Well, it's probably going to go up. Honestly, it's going to go up. It's going to go up under you. It's going to be interesting to see the net impact of the lower tax rates. A lot of people think you lower tax rates, you bring in less tax revenue. That does not necessarily follow. Matter of fact, that didn't follow back during the Reagan years. Reagan lowered. You think this tax cut was something? Reagan lowered the top marginal tax rate from, I think, 70%. Down to 25 or 28%. He lowered the
no wonder it exploded.
Everybody thought this was going to be terrible because we wouldn't bring it. It was going to reduce the amount of revenue we bring in. And what happened was the economy grew so darn fast that we actually brought in more tax revenue under this time period. One of the ways my wife made money before that tax cut was she was an accountant for Deloitte Haskins and Sells, and she was finding tax shelters for rich people. Well, when Reagan lowered that rate down 28%. Nobody came to her anymore. That business went away, right?
Right.
They said it's cheaper just to pay the taxes. And so you got to be careful about associating lower tax rates with lower tax revenues. That does not necessarily follow.
So what do you recommend then? How do we deal with this deficit and this debt?
Well, I would argue that if you look at a graph of what has happened to our revenues, somehow or another, the people of the United States figure out a way to only send 19% of their money into the federal government. I don't care what it's kind of interesting if you look at a marginal tax rate chart and then how much people send in, what percentage of real gross domestic product they send in. It's 19%. It doesn't matter. They're smart, clever, greedy capitalists. They figure out a way around it. The problem in the United States has never been a problem of revenues. It's been a problem of spending.
Interesting.
If you don't take care of the spending side, then you're always going to have. You're always going to have problems.
Well, God, we're screwed.
As a matter of fact, and you got to start with George Bush the second. I mean, the second W. I mean, he let there's a distinct kink in government spending. Of course, under Obama, there's another distinct kink in government spending. The problem is spending. The problem is not the revenue side.
So this is a political problem. There's no way it's ever going to change, based on everything I'm saying. Unless you do the convention of the states or something.
You and I think will be long gone for that.
All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit. I know for Louisiana, his positions on reducing regulation and opening up areas to oil drilling and opening up the market, it seems like, or at least aiding exports, has been beneficial, yes or no?
Well, I mean, if he is able to open up the East Coast and West Coast and the West Coast of Florida to more drilling, that would certainly be good for us because we're the people that know how to do it here in Louisiana. I mean, the Hank Danoses and the Bollingers and all these people, Edison Schwester, these people know how to do it, and they know how to do it very efficiently. They're doing stuff in the Gulf of Mexico. This is more difficult than landing a person on the moon.
Interesting.
The problem you're going to run into is that many of these states on the coast just don't want it to happen. California's going to do everything they can to prevent that from happening. And many of the states on the eastern coast are going to try to keep it from happening. The spill, the BP spill, was just set the whole movement back a lot, even though a year after the spill, you could go down a sand dust and you'd never know what happened. Matter of fact, the beaches were cleaner than they were before the spill because they had so many people down there fixing it up. Fish catch, pop back up, but it'll be used forever as a way to keep the East Coast and the West Coast from being opened up.
So you haven't seen that much benefit. So you haven't seen that much benefit yet.
Not yet. It's way too early on that. There's still rules and regulations you got to get around, and permitting they got to get around. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. The main thing that's hurting Louisiana right now on the oil side is the price of oil.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith on Legal Lines with my special guest, Dr. Loren Scott. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. First of all, I want to thank you for considering our firm for help in handling your legal matter. We know what we're doing. We've been around for a long time. We have over 60 years combined legal experience as lawyers. I've been practicing over 30 years, Sean over 25, and I have paralegals and legal secretaries who've worked for me for over 27 years. We've handled about every kind of case you can handle, and we've been very good at it. The bottom line is, it is our goal to be your protector when necessary, advisor, negotiator, and to successfully conclude the litigation for you in a way that is very favorable. Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show Dr. Loren Scott. He's Professor Emeritus in Economics from the School of LSU. Let's dive in. So we're talking about kind of Louisiana and your analysis now of Louisiana for our past and where we're headed.
Well, I mean, we just came out of a recession, actually. There was about a 20-month recession in the state. It wasn't a terrible one. We lost about 1.2% of our jobs, something like that.
How many people is that?
Huh?
1.2% is how many?
It's going to be something like 20,000, 24,000 jobs, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Focused in particular oil areas.
Well, what happened was, it was heavily concentrated in the oil patch. The pull down there was there. Mainly Lafayette, Houma, and Shreveport, as it turns out. To give you an idea, during what we call the Great Recession at the national level, 08 and 09, employment dropped 6.1%. In Houma, it's dropped 16.4%. And in Lafayette, it's dropped 11%. It's been like an unopened parachute. And unfortunately, they are still declining. Not as bad as they were before, but they are still declining. Shreveport is also down. Actually, Shreveport peaked in 08, if you can believe it or not. They're still below where they were in 08 and still dropping.
So the cause is what?
The cause of dropping the price of oil.
So what is causing the price of oil to drop?
In the case of Shreveport, the drop in the price of natural gas. The thing that Shreveport actually got to a kind of an artificial high in 08 because the price of natural gas, it reached double digit. It was $12, $13 per million BTU. And there is a play up there called the Haynesville Shale that was the second major shale play in the United States. It was just, they were like a gold mining town during the gold rush days, but it is a dry play. The only thing you get out of it is natural gas. Well, the price of natural gas dropped to where it is today, $3 per million BTU, $2.50, $3 per million BTU. And what happened was drillers started saying, wait a minute, instead of drilling in dry plays like the Haynesville Shale and the Fayetteville Shale in Arkansas, let's go to the Eagle Ford in Texas, or the Permian Basin in Texas, or the Bakken Play in North Dakota, or the Marcellus up in Pennsylvania, where you can drill and you get both oil, which is $100 a barrel at the time, and natural gas.
That's kind
so
of
the rig count just went through the floor at Shreveport, just killed them. But it's mainly in our particular case, it's the low price of oil has just killed the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, the Gulf of Mexico is heavily supported by Lafayette and Houma. And when the rig count there went from 56 down to 16 or so, 17, it just sent them into a tailspin.
So the demand for energy just went down, and therefore the demand for oil and gas
the
went
primary
down?
the primary reason the price went down, it wasn't the demand side. The demand side has rarely been the problem on the oil side. If in fact you look at a graph of demand for oil in the world, it's kind of going like that.
Okay.
The problem is the supply side. The reason the price of oil dropped the way it did in 2014 is the Saudis were watching how much oil was coming out of the shale plays in the United States with fracking, and they said, wait a minute, we got to stop this. So what they did is they turned on the faucets. They pumped a whole bunch of oil on the market and drove the price from 110 at one point down to under 30. But what they're trying to do is kill the shale plays. But what they didn't count on was how smart these people are and how clever they are. In these shale plays back in 2014, the break-even point was about $80 a barrel. They've gotten it down to under 30 in some cases. They are just really clever.
Interesting.
And so now when the price of oil goes up a little bit like it has recently, guess what they're doing? they're hopping back into the shale play in a big way again and producing more oil. Even the Saudis have turned the faucet off and take some oil off, but these guys are putting much more on because of the higher
and it's
price.
good for security too.
Well, it's good for us.
We're not held hostage by OPEC.
Yeah. It's a whole lot better now for us. I mean, the shale oil is just, it really was a revolution. We don't use that. I don't use that word very often, but this was a revolution in the energy side. This changed
That's
everything.
good news then, in the long run.
Do what?
It's good news in the long run.
Oh, it's good news in the long run. We got all the natural gas we can say grace over. That's really, really good. Great for the chemical industry in the southern part of our state. Great for the new LNG export terminals in the southern part of our state. It's just great for consumers out there who use it to cook with, and et cetera, et cetera. It's been great. And then the oil thing has been good for the United States. We're now actually exporting oil for the first time since '75.
It's remarkable.
So
all right, well, so give me what your observations are for the next year.
Well, the next year for the state, I think the state next year is going to be growing but relatively slowly. Again, we came out of the recession in May of 17, I mean, and we're growing, but right now we're growing at about a 0.5% rate. It's not real good growth, and the reason is we're still being pulled down to the oil patch. We need the price of oil to get up in the 60s and stay there for about a year before these big companies will start to go back out of the Gulf of Mexico and start to drill.
And we don't have control over that.
We have no control over that.
What about the state government being $1 billion in debt every single year?
Well, we are in debt this time about $1.5 billion. And the tricky thing and the most important thing about that is how you solve that problem. If you solve it strictly with taxes, the governor has said he thinks it's only fair, there's that word, to share this between business and individuals, which sounds really good on the surface until you take into account there are $85 billion worth of projects out there that are at the permitting stage in our state. That's 50 times more than any state I keep up with to the east of here. And I keep up with 9 other states. It's a huge amount of money. And their decision about whether to go ahead and stay here and do that or go to Texas is strictly math. There's some accountant down in the bowels of their company figured the rate of return on equity, right? And taxes are an important player in that rate of return on equity. If we solve this by raising taxes on them, that's just another thing that makes them want to go one state to the west. Exactly right. And there's not a little bit at stake. It's not like there's $1 billion. There's $85 billion at stake.
So they're going to cost themselves more tax revenue than they would. So how do they fix the problem? Spending side again?
Well, they would like to solve it by just raising taxes, but here's the problem. If you talk to anybody in Lafayette, Houma, the North Shore, where there's a lot of oil people, Shreveport, guess what Hornbeck has been doing for the last year? They build the boats and service the boats that service the offshore oil and gas industry. They have been laying off people. They've been laying off mariners, been laying off people at their headquarters. They've been cutting everybody's salaries. And you come to them and say, we know you've been doing that, but we got to keep government at the same level. That just doesn't go down the crawl. So I don't think this problem is going to be solved strictly with tax increases. I think you're going to have some cuts. It's hard enough to solve a problem like this with taxes when the economy's growing and rocking and rolling. When you got 3 major cities in a recession having to do what Hornbeck's having to do, it's going to be really hard to get it done with tax decreases.
Well, I think I saw you recently author an article or give a speech, or somebody did, about the economic benefit of LSU to the state, and that it was significant, and yet it always seems like these, at least they're arguing, they're always the ones that suffer the cuts. Higher education and health care.
And healthcare, yeah, that's the problem with our budget. The nature of our budget is such that basically almost 2/3 of the budget is protected from any cuts, which is ridiculous.
So how do we fix
this?
So
what we do is you've got to cut healthcare or higher ed. Well, yeah, in a perfect world, we got too darn many 4-year colleges. Okay, we have too many, so we
be more efficient, like a business.
That is not going to, shutting those down is not going to happen.
Tell me some good news.
The economy is growing on the net. That's the good news on the net.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Very much great seeing you again.
Good to see you.
This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines. My special guest, Dr. Loren Scott. Thank you for being with us.